Welcome to this episode of Intel Focus, the review series, where we dive into the world of OSINT, disinformation, and media literacy. Each episode reviews key reports and findings, including events around the world, offering in-depth analysis on topics like intelligence gathering, digital misinformation, investigative reports, and fact-checking. This podcast aims to promote ethical and responsible practices in intelligence and information sharing. In this episode, we talk about an investigation by Lighthouse Reports, in collaboration with The Independent and Sky News, which documents the plight of Afghan commandos who served alongside British forces. The investigation exposes how the UK government has rejected the relocation applications of these commandos, despite their significant contributions to the war effort.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're tackling a tough one. We're diving deep into this situation with those Afghan commandos trained by the UK, the triples, left behind after the withdrawal from Afghanistan. We've got these investigative reports from Lighthouse Reports and The Independent, and honestly, some of the stuff they found about the UK's role, what these soldiers are facing now, is pretty unsettling.
It's definitely a story that reveals just how complicated these international relations can be, especially after long conflicts, right? You see these promises made during wartime, but then the question of who's responsible for those who fought alongside foreign powers, it gets very murky.
Yeah, no kidding. And reading these reports, one thing that really got me was how closely the UK was working with these soldiers. We're not talking some hands-off training program here. These guys were on the British payroll. There's even a pay slip in here with a UK signature on it, which is wild.
It's striking, isn't it? The reports really show this gap between what the UK government's saying officially versus what actually went down. The Ministry of Defense, they're claiming these soldiers weren't closely partnered, but then you see evidence of direct funding, the training they did together, joint operations, paints a different picture.
Totally. Makes you question the whole story around the withdrawal. How committed the UK really was to those who fought alongside their troops. These soldiers, they put their lives on the line, believed in this shared future, and now that's been completely ripped away. They're being hunted by the Taliban, tortured, some even killed.
It's not just the soldiers either. Their families are being targeted too. These reports, they uncover this pattern of violence, intimidation against the triples, anyone connected to them. It's not isolated. It feels systematic, like the Taliban's trying to silence anyone who had anything to do with foreign forces.
Yeah, and the stories of these individuals, Ahmad, Riaz Ahmadsai, Karaman, those really stuck with me. Imagine being one of these guys. In hiding, can't even provide for your family, constantly looking over your shoulder, knowing what you did could get you killed.
It's a terrifying reality to be living in, and we're talking highly skilled soldiers trained to fight alongside British forces. They were seen as valuable during the war. Now, those same skills make them targets.
And for so many of their families, it's too dangerous to even speak out, to even acknowledge their loved ones served. They're forced to grieve in silence, just completely consumed by fear. The whole situation is just awful, and then you've got the UK government not being transparent at all, which just makes it all so much worse.
The lack of accountability is what's really concerning. The Ministry of Defense is hiding behind these strict criteria for rejecting relocation applications, and we're talking about applications from the very soldiers who are risking their lives alongside their forces. But when you look at the reports, there are hints of inconsistencies in the process, a lack of proper investigation into each case.
It's crazy, right? The UK government say they can't even be sure who served in these units. They don't have employment records. With everything we've seen about how closely they were working together.
Yeah, you really have to wonder about the systems in place, or the lack of them. The reports, they get into how this triples program was structured. It stands for train, advise, and assist, basically. These Afghan commandos were like the elite, the ones doing the riskiest missions, right alongside UK Special Forces.
So for anyone listening who's not deep in the military lingo, what did that partnership actually look like day to day?
Imagine this. You've got British soldiers, Afghan soldiers, they're living together, training together, eating together, going out on these incredibly dangerous missions together. One of the British veterans quoted in the reports, they called it a completely symbiotic partnership, said, "You couldn't work more hand in glove with the British than they did."
Wow. That is incredibly close. And the reports back that up, right? There's actual proof of that.
Oh, yeah. You've got training certificates signed by both British and Afghan commanders, pictures of them in shared living quarters, even a photo of a flag, like a Union Jack, sewn to an Afghan flag hanging in the British Mentors mess hall. It's powerful. It shows the kind of bond they had.
Makes it even harder to think that the UK could just turn away from these people, knowing that.
It's a tough contrast, and the detail that really gets me is the pay situation. Remember that pay slip, the one with the UK signature on it? It turns out many of these soldiers were getting paid regularly, directly from the UK government, right up until Kabul fell.
It's not like he was under the table or something. Weren't there official documents laying out how that worked?
Exactly. The reports actually cite this Army training manual from 2018, totally public, and it describes this whole top-up pay system for the Afghan soldiers. They called it an operational bonus, paid out for each day they were deployed.
So just to be totally clear for our listeners, we have UK documents, official ones, saying they were making these payments, acknowledging this close partnership, even stating that this financial incentive, that it greatly increased enthusiasm among Afghan soldiers to take on these dangerous missions.
Precisely. And yet, the Ministry of Defense is saying they can't even confirm who served in these units, that they don't have those records. Doesn't make sense.
It's infuriating, honestly. Feels like they're hiding behind all this bureaucratic jargon while people are out there fighting for their lives.
And that's just it. It's not just words on paper. That deliberate lack of clarity, it has real consequences. While the UK government's stalling, these soldiers are having to survive in this incredibly dangerous environment, Taliban rule. And the reports, they're full of stories of former triples being hunted down, tortured, killed because of their ties to the UK.
It just makes you angry. These guys, they risked everything, trusted the UK, and now they're left to deal with this mess on their own. It's like their sacrifice means nothing.
And that brings up another thing from these reports that's really disturbing. The whole relocation process. These Afghan soldiers, they're in danger, serious danger, because they worked with the UK. They could apply to be relocated, resettled in the UK. But the reports, they found some really messed up stuff about how that whole system worked.
Yeah, wasn't there something about UK Special Forces being involved in those applications? The same units these guys were fighting alongside.
Yeah, that's right. The reports say that UK Special Forces, the ones working directly with the triples, they had the power to basically veto relocation applications.
Wait, hold on. So the same guys who were out there with these Afghan soldiers, seeing what they were doing, how committed they were, they could just stop them from getting to safety.
That's what it looks like, according to these reports. And it makes you think about conflicts of interest, right? Especially because at the same time, some UK Special Forces units were being investigated themselves for alleged war crimes in Afghanistan.
This is just, man, every layer gets worse. It makes you wonder, were some of these abandoned soldiers potential witnesses to those crimes? And were their applications rejected to keep them quiet? It's a chilling thought.
Definitely a possibility these reports raise, and it's a disturbing one. But even if we don't go there, even if we don't speculate about their motives, the fact that they had that veto power, it's a huge flaw in the system. It makes you question if it was fair, if it's transparent, if the UK was really serious about protecting those who served alongside them.
It's a betrayal, plain and simple. So what now? What can be done to help these guys?
Getting the word out is the first step, the most important one. These stories, these reports, people need to know. Public pressure, it can make a difference. And the good news is there are organizations out there like Lighthouse Reports. They're doing amazing work, shining a light on this, fighting for these soldiers.
That's good to hear, at least. What about legally? Is there any way to hold the UK government accountable?
There are legal challenges underway, which is hopeful. The reports mention lawyers who are arguing that the whole process for rejecting these applications, it's unlawful, that it's not transparent, people aren't given clear reasons for being rejected. So they're pushing for more accountability, a fairer system.
Sounds like a tough fight against a mountain of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
But hopefully they can make some headway.
I hope so, too. And we have to acknowledge these soldiers who are speaking out, sharing their stories, even with everything at stake. That takes guts. Their strength in the face of all this, it's pretty inspiring.
No doubt. Their bravery is humbling, and their stories deserve to be heard. So to everyone listening, we'll link those full investigations, the ones from Lighthouse Reports and The Independent, in the show notes. Please take the time to read them, to really understand the human cost of all of this.
I second that. And as you're reading, ask yourself, what do countries owe to the people who fought alongside them, who put their lives on the line, often at great personal risk? What can we do to make sure these relocation programs are transparent, accountable, so this doesn't happen again?
Those are questions we all need to be asking, to be angry about, and most importantly, to do something about. If anything in this deep dive resonated with you, even a little, here's what you can do. Learn more. Support those organizations fighting for these abandoned soldiers. Talk about it. Hold those in power accountable. Because staying silent, that just makes us part of the problem. Every voice, every action, it matters.